spondylolisthesis produces distinct symptoms compared to other spinal conditions, including pain when standing and bending over a countertop or a sink. The subluxation of the bones often result in spinal stenosis, which I mentioned before, which is a narrowing of the foramen through which the nerve roots pass. The condition may result in numbness and/or pain in the buttocks, and further inferiorly to the legs and possibly the feet. A metaphor for that is the physics involved in bridges. In this bridge metaphor, you see how the structure carefully balances gravitational forces, channeling the load onto its supports. So we've got four things happening here in the bridge model. Compression forces push down on the bridge's deck. The deck is the road part of it, that horizontal plane upon which you drive when you drive over the bridge. After that, load transfers through the cables to the anchorages. Following that, towers dissipate the compression and tensional forces pass to the anchorages and into the ground. And furthermore, load continues to be transferred through the cables back up to the towers. So you see this really nice cycle. And that's essentially what's happening in the quadrupedal design. If we go back to the previous slide, you see that spine is more like a suspension bridge. And that hole through which the nerve roots pass is going to narrow, and that's called spinal stenosis. And so by putting a spacer, an artificial spacer, a synthetic spacer between the two bodies of the adjacent vertebrae, and also drilling those screws deep into the body of each vertebra, and then attaching that rod, what they're gonna do is they're gonna be able to stabilize that joint. Following this procedure, the spine is still biomechanically much the same as it was prior to the injury, and most patients will not perceive much difference in their movement capacity. Now, you ask yourself, how is that even possible? You've got to consider that the movement of the spine is happening as an aggregate of range of motion of all 24 of these consecutive bones and joints. So here we have 3 adjacent vertebrae, and we can get a certain amount of movement. Notice that every time we move, though, it's going to disperse across the surface of the distance, the length of all 3 of these vertebrae. Now, if it so happens that you have to stabilize 2 of them in order to maintain that space between the vertebrae through which the nerve roots can pass, then you're going to lose a little bit. But you've got 22 other joints that you still have full capacity, and in most cases, those remaining 22 joints can pull their weight and make up for the loss of movement, the loss of mobility here between these 2 individual vertebrae. During long, slow exhales, the vagus nerve is stimulated, which results in decreased heart rate and blood pressure, which can be linked to both physical and psychological well-being. The receptors that stimulate the shifts in heart rate are located in the sinuses. Breathing through the nose allows us to willingly manipulate breathing in order to intervene with the processes that are typically regulated by the autonomic nervous system. That's this big statement about how breathing is the bridge between the mind and the body. So appreciate now how the core muscles really do wrap entirely around. And again, you're missing a couple of inches right there at the spinous processes, but hopefully on this next one, you'll be able to see another view, this time with transverse abdominis isolated. Transverse abdominis is the deepest layer, so it's impossible to see unless the other abdominal muscles are removed. So just picture that. You're basically covering all fiber directions. You're basically covering the entire surface of that cylindrical column.